Hey guys, it's time for the next few chapters of the Tale of Despereaux. Last time we started book 2 where we met a character called Roscuro or Chiaroscuro, and we learned that that word means light and darkness together. But Roscuro is a rat, and all rats care about is darkness, or they're supposed to. Roscuro is obsessed with light and its rarity in the dungeon. So, he's obsessed, but another rat, Botticelli, is trying to convince him to be more of a rat, because that's what he is. So, another prisoner was just brought into the dungeon, and Botticelli has convinced Roscuro to choose that prisoner, to torture him, and to bring meaning into Roscuro's life. And Roscuro convinced himself it is not the light that he desires, but the red cloth, the small comfort of the prisoner that he desires. In other words, to torture the prisoner. We continue with this in chapter 18, Confessions. Roscuro went, as Botticelli told him he must, to torment the new prisoner and to take the red cloth from him. The man was sitting with his legs stretched out straight in front of him, chained to the floor. The red cloth was still draped over his shoulders. Roscuro squeezed through the bars and crept slowly over the damp, weeping stones of the cell floor. When he was close to the man, he said, "Ah, welcome, welcome. We are delighted to have you." The man lit a match and looked at Roscuro. Roscuro stared longingly into the light. "Go on," said the prisoner. He waved a hand in the direction of Roscuro, and the match went out. "You're nothing but a rat." "I am," said Roscuro. "Exactly that. A rat. Allow me to congratulate you on your very astute powers of observation." "What do you want, rat?" "What do I want? Nothing. Nothing for my sake, that is. I have come for you. I have come to keep you company here in the darkness." He crawled closer to the man. "I don't want the company of a rat." What about the solace a sympathetic ear can provide? You need that, don't you? Huh? Would you like to confess your sins? To a rat? You're kidding me. "Come on," said Roscuro. "Close your eyes. Pretend that I am not a rat. Pretend that I am nothing but a voice in the darkness, a voice that cares." The prisoner closed his eyes. "All right," he said. "I'll tell you, but I'm telling you because there ain't no point in not telling you, no point in keeping secrets from a dirty little rat. I ain't in such a desperate way that I need to lie to a rat." The man cleared his throat. "I'm here for stealing 6 cows, 2 jerseys, and 4 guineas. Cow theft. That's my crime." He opened his eyes and stared into the darkness. He laughed. He closed his eyes again. "But there's something else I've done, many years ago. Another crime. And they don't even know it." "Go on," said Roscuro softly. He crept closer. He allowed one paw to touch the magical red cloth. "I traded my girl, my own daughter, for this red tablecloth, and for a hen, and for a handful of cigarettes." "Tsk," said Roscuro. He was not alarmed to hear of such a hideous thing. His parents, after all, had not much cared for him, and certainly, if there was any profit in it, they would have sold him. And then, too, Botticelli Remorcio, one lazy Sunday afternoon, had recited from memory all the confessions he had heard from prisoners. What humans were capable of came to no surprise to Roscuro. "And then," the man said. "And then," encouraged Roscuro, "and then I done the worst thing of all. I walked away from her, and she was crying and calling out for me, and I did not even look back. I did not. Oh, Lord, I kept walking." The prisoner cleared his throat. He sniffed. "Ah," said Roscuro. "Yes, I see. By now he was standing so that all 4 of his paws were touching the red cloth. "Do you find comfort in this cloth that you sold your child for?" "It's warm," said the man. "Was it worth your child?" "I like the color of it." "Does the cloth remind you of what you have done wrong?" "It does," the prisoner said. He sniffed. "It does." "Allow me to ease your burden," said Roscuro. He stood on his hind legs and bowed at the waist. "I will take this reminder of your sin from you," he said. The rat took hold of the tablecloth in his strong teeth and pulled it off the shoulders of the man. "Hey, see here! I want that back!" But Roscuro, reader, was quick. He pulled the tablecloth through the bars of the cell. Whoosh! Like a magic trick in reverse. "Hey!" shouted the prisoner. "Bring that back! It's all I've got!" "Yes," said Roscuro, "and that is exactly why I must have it." "You dirty rat!" shouted the prisoner. "Yes," said Roscuro. "That's right. That is most accurate." And he left the man and dragged the tablecloth back to his nest and considered it. What a disappointment it was! Looking at it, Roscuro knew that Botticelli was wrong. Roscuro wanted what he needed. What Roscuro wanted, what he needed, was not the cloth, but the light that had shone behind it. He wanted to be filled, flooded, blinded again with the light. And for that, reader, the rat knew that he must go upstairs. Chapter 19. Light, light everywhere. Imagine, if you will, having spent the whole day of your life in the dungeon. The whole of your life in the dungeon. Imagine that late one spring day you step out of the darkness and into the world of bright windows and polished floors, winking copper pots, shining suits of armor, and tapestries sewn in gold. Imagine, and while you are imagining things, imagine this too. Imagine that at the same time the rat steps from the dungeon and into the castle, a mouse is being born upstairs. A mouse, reader, who is destined to meet the light-bedazzled rat. But that meeting will occur much later. And for now, the rat is nothing but happy, delighted, amazed to find himself standing in so much light. "I," said Roscuro, spinning dizzily from one bright thing to the other, "I will never leave. No, never. I will never go back to the dungeon. Why would I? I will never torture another prisoner. It is here that I belong." The rat waltzed happily from room to room until he found himself at the door to the banquet hall. He looked inside and saw, gathered there, King Philip, Queen Rosemary, and the Princess P. 20 noble people, a juggler, 4 minstrels, and all the king's men. This party, reader, was a sight for a rat's eyes. Roscuro had never seen happy people. He had known only the miserable ones, Gregory the jailer, and those who were consigned to his domain did not laugh or smile or clink glasses with the person sitting next to them. Roscuro was enchanted. Everything glittered, everything. The golden spoons on the table and the jingle bells on the juggler's cap, the strings on the minstrels' guitars, and the crown on the king's and queen's heads. And the little princess, oh, how lovely she was, how much like light itself! Her gown was covered in sequins that winked and glimmered at the rat. And when she laughed, and she laughed often, everything around her seemed to glow brighter. "Oh, really," said Roscuro, "this is too extraordinary. This is too wonderful. I must tell Botticelli that he was wrong. Suffering is not the answer. Light is the answer." And he made his way into the banquet hall. He lifted his tail off the ground and held it at an angle and marched in time to the music the minstrels were playing on their guitars. The rat, reader, invited himself to the party. Chapter 20. A View from the Chandelier. There was, in the banquet hall, the most beautiful, ornate chandelier. The crystals that hung from it caught the light of the candles on the table in the light from the face of the laughing princess. They danced to the rhythm of the minstrel's music, swaying back and forth, twinkling and beckoning. What better place to view all this glory and beauty? There was so much laughing and singing and juggling that no one noticed as Roscuro crawled up a table leg and onto the table. From there, flung himself into the lowest branch of the chandelier. Hanging by one paw, he swung back and forth, admiring the spectacle below. The smells of the food, the sound of the music, and the light. Amazing, unbelievable. Roscuro smiled and shook his head. Unfortunately, a rat can hang from a chandelier for so long, and for only so long before he is discovered. This would be true at even the loudest party. Reader, do you know who it was that spotted him? You're right. The sharp-eyed Princess P. "A rat!" she shouted. "A rat is hanging from the chandelier!" The party, as I have noted, was loud. The minstrels were strumming and singing. The people were laughing and eating. The man with the jingle cap was juggling and jingling. No one in the midst of all this merriment heard the pea, except Roscuro. Rat. He had never before been aware of the ugly word it was. Rat. In the middle of all the beauty, it immediately became clear that it was extremely distasteful. It was an extremely distasteful syllable. Rat. A curse, an insult, a word totally without light, and not until he heard it from the mouth of the princess did Roscuro realize that he did not like being a rat, that he did not want to be a rat. This revelation hit Roscuro with such force that it made him lose his grip on the chandelier. The rat, reader, fell, and at last he fell directly into the queen's soup. Here's a picture, if you can see it, is the rat hanging from the chandelier. And there below him is the queen eating her soup. And I will read one more chapter. Chapter 21, The Queen's Last Words. The queen loved soup. She loved soup more than anything in the world except for the Princess P and the king. And because the queen loved it, soup was served in the castle for every banquet, every lunch, and every dinner. And what soup it was! Cook's love and admiration for the queen and her palate moved the broth that she concocted from the level of mere food to a high art. On this particular day, for this particular banquet, Cook had outdone herself. The soup was a masterwork, a delicate mingling of chicken, watercress, and garlic. Roscuro, as he resurfaced from the bottom of the queen's capacious soup, could not help taking a few appreciative sips. "Lovely," he said, distracted for a moment from the misery of his existence. "Delightful." "See!" shouted the pea. "See!" She stood. She pointed her finger right at Roscuro. "It is a rat! I told you that it was a rat! He was hanging from the chandelier, and now he is in Mamma's soup!" The musicians stopped playing their guitars. The jugglers stopped juggling. The noble people stopped eating. The queen looked at Roscuro. Roscuro looked at the queen. Reader, in the spirit of honesty, I must utter a difficult and unsavory truth. Rats are not beautiful creatures. They are not even cute. They are, really, rather nasty beasts, particularly if one happens to appear in your bowl of soup, with pieces of watercress clinging to its whiskers. There was a long moment of silence, and then Roscuro said to the queen, "I beg your pardon." In response, the queen flung her spoon into the air, made an incredible noise, a noise that was in no way worthy of a queen, a noise somewhere between the neigh of a horse and the squeal of a pig, a noise that sounded something like this: "Neigh!" stink! And then she said, "There's a rat in my soup!" The queen was really a simple soul, and always. Her whole life had done nothing except state the overly obvious. She died as she lived. "There is a rat in my soup" were the last words she uttered. She clutched her chest and fell over backwards. Her royal chair hit the floor with a thump, and the banquet hall exploded. Spoons were dropped. Chairs were flung back. "Save her!" thundered the king. "You must save her!" All the king's men ran to try and rescue the queen. Roscuro climbed out of the bowl of soup. He felt that, under the circumstances, it would be best if he left. As he crawled across the tablecloth, he remembered the words of the prisoner in the dungeon, his regret that he did not look back at his daughter as he left her. And so, Roscuro turned. He looked back, and he saw that the princess was glaring at him. Her eyes were filled with disgust and anger. "Go back to the dungeon," was what the look she gave him said. "Go back into the darkness where you belong." This look, reader, broke Roscuro's heart. Did you think that rats do not have hearts? Wrong. All things have a living heart. All living things have a heart, and the heart of any living thing can be broken. If the rat had not looked over his shoulder, perhaps his heart would not have broken. And it is possible then that I would not have to tell this story at all. But reader, he did look. And I think we will stop there for today. A lot has happened. Roscuro has exited the dungeon. He wanted to bask in the beautiful light of upstairs, but when he did, the first day he was out there, he tried to admire a banquet, and then fell into a bowl of soup, and his whole life changed. And he realized he is a disgusting rat. Nobody wants to realize that about themselves. How do you think Roscuro feels? Next time.